This girl was catfishing people with my pictures, and her own sister was the one that actually told me about this. She had a Facebook of me with a lot of pictures for 3 years. I tried to report it, but they didn't remove the page. Later on, I get a DM from this guy. He told me that he fell in love with the catfish, and he was just venting to me. He said that they would always text and call each other. He even said that she would talk on the phone with his mom. He told me that she had an Instagram and a Snapchat acting like it was me. And I asked him, I know this is very personal, but does she ever send you anything inappropriate or nudes through Snapchat or through these apps? Tell me why. He says yes. He went back on his Snapchat and he was able to find those pictures. Her face was not showing, but her body was. And it's crazy because her body shape was exactly like mine. I was so creeped out. A catfish wouldn't only send pictures of my selfies, but she would also send pictures of nudes. Thankfully, it wasn't actually me. That would be very creepy. But this girl would send pictures of someone that looked like me with the same body shape as me. As far as I know, she would send these pictures through Snapchat. And tell me why I searched up the username and this Bitmoji literally looked like me. Like the emoji that we could create, it looked like me. Like, how is this possible? And the guy that fell in love with her actually sent me a picture of how she looks like. And let me tell you, that girl does not look like me at all. I had contacted the fake page and I told her to stop or else I would expose her pictures. And she didn't care. She still did it. So I exposed her on my personal page and I showed everybody how she looked like. And it shocked me all the time. I was in a different country and the most horrible thing happened to me. I was kidnapped, but I was able to escape. I was taken to an airport and I was flying by myself. I was so weak. My body was starting to hurt a lot and I was put in a wheelchair. So I had a helper with me. He worked there at the airport and he was just pushing my wheelchair and he was honestly very nice. He was talking to me and just making me feel comfortable. I did have cuts on my body and he asked me what happened to me. And honestly, I felt comfortable and I told him what happened to me. He was in shock. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. And tell me why I'm about to get on my airplane and he hands me a note, guys. And I opened up the note and it was his phone number. Like, this is not the time or place to be handing out phone numbers. Like, wrong moment. Have some respect. I was in the car with my boyfriend and I showed him a picture that I posted on IG. And tell me why this man flipped out. He said that he didn't like how my hand was positioned, that I looked like a hoe. And I was so confused because there was nothing wrong with that picture. It's not like I was wearing provocative clothing or anything. He ended up screaming at me and honestly I was so fed up to the point that I got off the car and I just ended up walking to a donut place. I sat down, ate my donut, relaxed, and then I walked back to the car. This grown man threw the hugest fit ever. He was still screaming at me. He ended up throwing my keys to the floor and breaking my keychain. The cops showed up. One of the neighbors around there had complained about us and I was honestly so embarrassed. They ended up grabbing him and I remember he was just screaming saying, let me talk to my girlfriend, let me talk to my girlfriend. Cops told me to leave, so I did. I'm not gonna lie, he was the most controlling person I've ever dealt with.
This is why you might not want to use Facebook to find a roommate. My sister and I work in the medical field and we're renting a house together. The rent was pretty high and we quickly decided that it would be helpful if we got a roommate. However, after weeks of looking, we still couldn't find anyone. My sister and I were desperate and posted in the Facebook groups about needing a roommate. This woman in her late 30s named Tammy answered and we were excited that we had found our new roommate. When we met her and talked to her, everything seemed normal. She seemed nice and put together. My sister's in residency and I'm in nursing school, so we made it clear that we needed a respectful roommate who understood our schedules. When she first moved in, everything seemed to be going well. After the first week, I had a friend come over to hang out. While my friend was there, Tammy came into my room and introduced herself. I could smell the alcohol on her breath as she spoke and she started hitting on my friend. She kept telling her how she was down for hot girl bye shit. She was doing this all while aggressively petting my labradoodle. Luckily, my friend just laughed it off and we assumed that she was drunk. Then Tammy went to her room and after about 10 minutes, we started hearing moaning coming from her room. She didn't have any guests over and we tried to ignore it at first, but the moaning escalated to screaming. We could hear things being thrown around in the room as well. After 20 minutes of this, we got worried and went to get my sister. Part 2, why you might not want to use Facebook to find a roommate. My sister talked to Tammy and she apologized, saying she was just sleeping. About 2 weeks later, my sister stayed at her boyfriend's house and I was stuck with Tammy. I made myself dinner and I was eating, and that's when Tammy came downstairs. She was blasted drunk again and went to the stove. She started reheating my food, and that's when I asked her if she wanted some, but she said she was just stirring my food for me. After I ate my dinner, I went to look and she had taken all of it. Over time, I noticed she would eat our food without permission, even when I asked her not to. When I'd call her out on it, she would lie and say she didn't touch my food. We used to keep our liquor in the kitchen, but she started drinking from the bottles and we had to move them to our rooms. She would go into my room because I had a bottle of liquor and she drank it, then fill it up with water. However, it was easy to tell because it was whiskey. One night I was studying for one of my exams and I hear loud screaming. I assumed it was coming from her room, but when I opened my door, I realized it was coming from outside. I went downstairs and saw her laying on the floor of the backyard, screaming her head off. I told her that she was being loud and the neighbors would call the cops. She got up and apologized and then went to her room. However, she repeated this again a couple days later. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. Part 3 of why you might not want to use Facebook to find a roommate. A week after she started screaming in the backyard, my sister and I decided that we needed to get her out. We had a house meeting and told Tammy that she has a month to move out. At first, she was crying and upset, acting like she didn't know what she did wrong, but then she accepted it. However, the last month with her was the worst month of my life. I was concluding the semester at nursing school and it was about to be finals. She started eating me and my sister's packed lunches out of our lunch boxes. She also started breaking dishes on purpose, leaving the glass where our corgi and labradoodle would play. When I confronted her about it, she blew it off saying that it was an accident and hadn't gone around to cleaning it. One night, she sat me and my sister down threatening to sue us because we were trying to get rid of her during COVID. My sister wasn't having it and told her to get her lawyer. I installed 7 cameras in the house because I couldn't trust her while we weren't there and I was worried for our dogs. She would put her cigarette butts and ashes in our dog's food bowl, so I knew I needed to watch her. Whenever I checked the cameras, she was always up to something like eating our food, looking through our things, and going into our bedrooms when we weren't around. The craziest part of all of this is when she finally moved out and we saw her room. It was a complete mess. There was menstrual blood all over the carpet, scratches on the wall, and she left a painting that she had done of our house burning while she walked away. My husband and I are in our late 20s and have been married for 4 years. He finished college with a finance degree and thought he'd go into accounting, but quickly found out that it wasn't his passion. He bounced from jobs and ideas pre-COVID, but nothing really stuck. Since COVID, he hasn't attempted anything and said that after the pandemic ends, there will be a boom of jobs so he can find what he's passionate about. I've been working full-time and thankfully my job became remote. I've been paying the bills and keeping the food on the table. After the fiscal year closed, my work had done really well. We sell medical testing equipment, which was a big product of 2020. I was given a promotion and a pay raise, but also a small bonus. It was exciting because I could finally repair my purse and replace some shoes that were destroyed. When I told my husband, he seemed way more excited than me over this promotion. He went off about how he was going to redo his game area and get new systems. I was dumbfounded and got quiet because I couldn't believe what he was saying. He eventually went out and spent all of my bonus on a new computer. We got into a huge argument and he called me selfish for not being happy that he got to achieve his dream. He called me spoiled for being upset that I couldn't spend money on myself first. I called him ungrateful since I was the only one providing. He got mad and left the house saying that I'm making the money so I shouldn't throw it in his face that he doesn't have an income. Everyone thinks I overreacted to something that makes my husband happy. I've gotten so many texts about being an a-hole that I'm starting to wonder, am I? Part 2 of how my husband spent my bonus on himself. My husband went back to his parents and waited for my apology, which I never gave. Instead, I realized that I wasn't going to treat our relationship like a marriage if he wasn't, and I wasn't going to baby an almost 30-year-old. When he noticed I drained our joint bank account, he escalated things by saying that I was his and I could never leave him because he owned me. He also said that all of my success was his and without him, I would be a loser dropout. His family was even worse because I had already blocked them, so they made fake accounts using apps to hide their number and harass me. They said that I ruined their son's life and how he sacrificed everything to get me to where I am. They also said that throwing him to the side like this was disgusting and I deserved to rot. I provided all of this to my lawyer who recommended I get a restraining order and not engage but just keep the records. I separated our finances completely and changed banks. I told him that my husband is never allowed to access these accounts because I feel like he'd take it all and run. I changed my number and took myself off of social media. Part of me is broken our marriage came to an end over a computer. I must look like a fool to everyone for missing the warning signs. I lost a majority of my friends because they thought I was the selfish one since I was the one with the job. They also said that marriage is for better or worse and so on. I filed for divorce and I'm picking up the pieces. Storytime about how my carefree friend got rich by listening to the universe. I have a friend named Paige who's a free spirit. She believes in going with the flow, not stressing and letting the universe decide what happens next. I've always been more of a planner and kind of a workaholic. Paige always said that I work too hard and need to relax. She'd say I stress about things too much and the universe already has a plan for me, so I should let it run its course, but I never listened. I've had 2 jobs and I've been in school full-time for as long as I can remember. I always believe that if you want something, you have to work hard for it and make it happen. I never believed in just sitting back and waiting for things to happen for me or leaving it up to the universe as she'd often preach. However, maybe I should have slowed down and taken her advice. Over a few years, Paige and I drifted apart. She messaged me one day telling me that she was coming back to town and she'd like to visit me while she's here. I was absolutely shocked when she pulled up in a brand new Tesla. Paige never really cared about money and didn't really work besides selling her natural healing oils, which paid okay but nothing crazy. I hopped in and noticed she also had an expensive designer bag, eco-friendly of course, and expensive jewelry on. When I asked her where she got all this from, she told me that the universe got it for her, which is something that I'd expect her to say, but it didn't make any sense. What she was about to tell me changed my outlook on things and made me think that Paige's ideas and beliefs weren't so far-fetched after all. Part 2 about how my carefree friend got rich by listening to the universe. Paige told me how she always knew things would work out and the universe would take care of her if she did her part. She told me she got all of this money by being nice to the earth and catering to Mother Nature, which still made absolutely no sense to me. It sounded good, but I knew that the money didn't just fall into her lap from the sky for being nice to the planet and believing that the universe would take care of her. Upon further questioning, she finally explained that the universe told her to invest half of her money into something she believed in and donate the other half. She said she had been putting half of her money into solar power and eco-friendly stocks and donating the other half to environmental activists over the years. Paige believed that since she was doing her part to care for the planet was caring for her back. Well, it turns out that the stocks that she invested in for years blew up. She made enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life. To be honest, I was in complete shock. I always thought her carefree attitude and